Oh boy, it's time for another YouTube video. Dolm'd is a well-known brand of tasty pasta sauce. It's also the name of a Souls-like action game with guns. For some reason, that concept seems familiar to me, which is strange because I haven't actually played Hellpoint yet. Is it a good game? Well, I wouldn't say that it's a bad game, mainly because if video games have taught me anything, it's that you don't want Brazilian people to be your enemy. Though I will say that £35 is maybe a bit too expensive given how short it is. And I will admit that in some ways it can feel rather basic, so my recommendation will be to buy it when it's on sale and pretend it's an indie game, since, you know, it is. Because despite those shortcomings, I had fun with it, and who knows, maybe you will too. Unless you're put off by spoilers, in which case, stop watching. With that out of the way, I think it's time to talk about the gameplay. But first, we're going to need to make a dude. After naming your doll man or doll woman and selecting a class, you're given the opportunity to change the colour of your exosuit, and that's it. You see, the only way to remove your exosuit is to replace parts of it with other kinds of armour, meaning that your character never actually shows their face. As such, customising your appearance isn't really something you can do. But that's fine, this is an indie game after all. So let's move on to the story. There is a mining planet, and monsters have appeared, so you need to kill them with your guns and swords. This situation was probably caused by these things called Dolmen crystals, which have the power to distort time and space. This will become relevant later. You teleport onto the planet and arrive in the wrong place. Great start. The area is full of spider aliens, but you have a gun, so guess who wins? Shooting your gun requires energy, which recharges over time. However, restoring health decreases your maximum energy, until eventually the bar is so short that you can't fire at all. Fortunately, you can fix this by using a battery. But wait, did you notice what I just said about restoring health? That's right, rather than having two separate items to restore either health or energy, this game only lets you heal indirectly by using a battery and then converting the energy it gives you into health. So if your gun has an alt fire that uses up permanent energy, my advice would be not to use it, since it's effectively equivalent to launching first aid kits at the enemy on the basis that they deal slightly more damage than bullets do. Alternatively, you could just ignore guns completely in favour of close range combat. In this case, attacking or dodging is based around stamina, unless you went to Super Saiyan mode, in which case it uses energy instead. An option I ignored for most of my playthrough since, you know, guns. You also have a shield, which can be used to temporarily stun enemies by blocking their melee attacks at just the right time, or reflect ranged attacks back at them like you're playing Pong. So now that we've familiarised ourselves with the mechanics, we're able to rip and tear our way through the spooky spider dimension until we find this man, who shows us how to teleport to our spaceship. I hope you like this music, by the way, because you'll be hearing it a lot. This place allows us to do all kinds of things, like craft new equipment, change our colour scheme, read lore text, or enter the level up tube. Your character has 6 main stats. The top 3 make your bars longer and determine which kinds of armour you can wear, whereas the bottom ones improve your attacks and the types of weapons you can use. Everything you craft is categorised as human, Revian or driller, granting you various bonuses depending on how many you have equipped at once. Which brings us to the crafting system. We can make swords, guns, shields, or armour, and their base attributes can be improved using materials found by exploring or killing enemies. These item drops are completely random, by the way, so it's entirely possible to get a rare or even epic level upgrade component from a random spider. In fact, the only restriction seems to be that some components won't be dropped until the 2nd or 3rd chapter, so that you can't trivialise the entire game by crafting an endgame weapon before you reach the first boss. But with that out of the way, I think it's time for us to return to the planet once more, so that we can talk to drillers, be confused by the elevator controls, and shoot very stupid enemies until we find the giant spider. This is actually the first boss, but just like real life, spiders cease to be much of a problem if you shoot them with a gun. And yes, it can summon an army of smaller spiders to assist it. But the gun works on them too. Now, you might be expecting to get a unique weapon for defeating this boss, but this game is not like other girls. Defeating a boss actually just gives you a single unique crafting component, and you need 3 of them to construct their associated weapon. This is where the Dolmen crystals come in. You might have noticed this computer terminal right outside the boss room. By spending 3 Dolmen fragments, you can fight that boss again. And since Dolmen fragments are dropped randomly by enemies, you can effectively do this as many times as you want. In fact, you don't even have to come back here. You can choose to refight any boss by talking to this guy on your spaceship, and you'll be warped right back there afterwards. Usually. That aside, it's time to move on. So let's cut down the spider web and proceed to the robot corridor. I warned you about the loading screens, man. I told you, dog. Now, I'm not saying that this part is short, but we've arrived at the next boss. Here he is, stabbing a guy. Although I hope you weren't expecting his animation budget to extend beyond that introductory sequence. The gimmick here is that this room is full of electric spheres, which drain your energy on contact. You're supposed to lead him into them, so that you can attack while he's temporarily blue-balled. But you could also just let him get stuck in the corner and shoot him a lot. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Although I do wonder why I didn't receive anything for defeating him. Let's head downstairs and... oh. Unlike Mr. First Phase, this man prefers to shoot you from a distance, occasionally sending out robots, who basically act like the creepers in Minecraft. Fortunately, he's just as weak to bullets as nearly every other enemy in the game, so... okay, he's dead. And they don't seem to have a third guy lined up, so we can move on now. Each chapter has 3 boss fights, which means there's only one more to go before we reach the second chapter. But before we can do that, we need to do some... switch puzzles. Yes, that's right. We need to find 3 switches to unlock the next area, all whilst avoiding the danger orbs. You've already seen the blue ones, but this area also features red ones that drain your health. This is problematic since you'll probably get stuck here whilst trying to figure out where the other switches are. You need to go up here. Switches activated. Now we just need to do the steel ball run one more time, so that we can enter the final area. Try not to die here, by the way, or you'll have to go through the ball corridor again. Fortunately, there is another checkpoint once you get far enough. Now we just need to kill these enemies, go up the elevator, and walk all the way to the boss arena. It's quite a long way.
A few moments later.
I'm finding this a little bit difficult. Well, that was unfortunate. Oh well, time to kill these enemies, call the elevator, go up the elevator, and walk all the way to the boss arena. You have to do this every time you die. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really want to have to do this boss fight again, so if what you're seeing right now has nothing to do with Queen Cantipe, it means I decided to move on without capturing footage for this part of the video. Welcome to Chapter 2. Upon arrival at the Creo Rocket Assembly Station, you might notice that we now have an additional battery. Previously, the only way to have more than 4 was to pick one up.
Great! Another energy cell!
But these were temporary, i.e., they were lost upon respawn. This one, however, is a permanent upgrade, awarded for defeating Queen Cantipe like I just did. Beating the final Chapter 2 boss will give us another, so you'll end up with 7 at the end of the game. No, that's not a mistake. You see, you also get one for defeating the optional bonus boss. But we'll come back to that later. Our next goal is to traverse the orange zone, fighting well-animated enemies, avoiding the explodo drones, and trying not to get jump scared. There's also the ghosts, who I'm pretty sure are supposed to assist you, though there's nothing stopping you from shooting them anyways. In order to leave, we need to open this door. The switch to unlock it is in this cave. Okay, never mind. This is the Zimmerdante. The only one in the game, actually. It can be a bit of a challenge since, you know, it's immune to bullets. Fortunately, all we have to do is lead it over here, and then walk back around the other side. See? No need for violence at all. Unless you're trying to get the achievement for killing it, in which case, good luck, I guess. Our journey continues into... what is that? After solving this problem in the usual manner, we're able to explore the most wide open area in the game. It's so wide open, in fact, that you might not know where you need to go next. Surprise, it's another locked door. But this time we can't simply push a button to open it. Instead, we need to make our way to the power plant, which is really short. Like, the boss arena is a 2-minute walk from the starting point. It's here that we encounter the Pharaoh Nightmare, a creature whose diet seems to consist entirely of door-opening juice. We will therefore need to poke holes in it to extract some with our gun. The gimmick for this boss is that it can restore its health by flying over to these things, so you'll need to destroy them before turning your attention to the creature itself. Just be careful not to fall off the arena. Whoa! Now that the creature has been sufficiently punctured, the path forward should be unlocked. But first, we're going to take a detour. This is the Vahani Excavations, a hidden alternative route to the end of Chapter 2. I say alternative because I'm fairly certain that you can go this way without ever visiting the power plant. I just really enjoy fighting the Pharaoh Nightmare, you see. Before we can progress though, we'll need to unblock the path by fighting the bonus boss, which is... this thing again. This big spider is very similar to the last one, except instead of summoning smaller spiders, it creates webbing, which slows you down and prevents you from dodging. I guess you could say that this is a sticky situation. I should really try to spend less time on the web. Fortunately, you can destroy these traps by hitting them with your axe, but once, so it's not really as much of a problem as you might think. Defeating the copy-paste creature allows us to go through the spooky corridor, which leads us to the other side of the door we unlocked via the power plant. So now that we're back on track, it's time to head through the worm zone. You don't even need to fight the worm, you can just walk around it. And bam, we're at the final checkpoint for this chapter. After a short walk and an elevator ride, we're able to reach the boss arena and fight this guy. Well, that was unfortunate. Oh well, time to walk to the elevator, call the elevator, go up the elevator. I'm getting a sense of deja vu. Anyway, after carefully avoiding his two swords, we're able to defeat the end of chapter boss, allowing us to move on to the final segment of the game, the Dolm'd. It looks like this. Yeah, it's pretty dark. It's here that we meet the yo-yo enemies, one of the few cases in the game where the Second Amendment will not help you. The trick is to circle around and hit them from behind, which... okay, fine, but fighting them is more time-consuming than fun, and I think the developers realised this because they don't appear in any of the areas after the first boss. Speaking of which, if you thought that shooting monsters in a dark tech-based environment and pressing switches to unlock doors sounds a lot like Doom 3, then you'll be pleased to know that the boss for this area is basically the Cyber Demon. It even has a single metal leg. Pro tip, to defeat the Cyber Demon, shoot at it until it dies. Just be careful not to die yourself, because the nearest respawn location is not exactly close to the boss room. With that out of the way though, it's time to explore the next area, which is... totally different. That's right, it's time to do some gardening. Our goal is to destroy the weeds before the weeds destroy us, all whilst being assaulted by the local wildlife. This area is probably my favourite part of Chapter 3. It's a very welcome change from all of the darkness we had to deal with earlier. Praise the sun indeed. Through careful exploration, we can obtain a unique weapon that I like to call the Comedy Laser, which works like this. That was fun. Unfortunately, it probably won't be much use for the next boss, since he has the ability to deflect bullets using the rock hand gesture. On the plus side, you can kind of do the same thing to him. Now, it's not impossible to defeat him using only ranged weapons, but I get the impression that you're supposed to fight him up close. So that's what I did. By the way, he has a better Super Saiyan mode than we do. Yeah, try not to get hit by that. Anyway, eventually you call him a soy Wojak, and he gets so upset that he just leaves, allowing us to move on to the final part of the game. Welcome back to Dark Halls 2, Scholar of the Last Area. This is basically another switch hunt in the dark, featuring various enemies from earlier in the game, although fortunately we don't have to experience Yo-Yo's bizarre adventure again. The floating energy spheres are back though, just in case you haven't experienced enough shocking ball torture recently. There's also a unique Shadow Lady enemy here, in a room with only one entrance and 0 collectibles, so there's really no point in fighting her. I guess the developers just had a spare enemy lying around. But that's all there really is to say about this part. It's time to move on to the final boss, and bring this game to a conclusion.
Ette katsoo, että on buffet.
The final boss is really easy, especially when compared with the other end of chapter bosses. And especially if you've crafted the Nicky Boom, a comically powerful gun, which you can theoretically obtain before you even reach the Cyber Demon. Its alt fire creates a black hole, which deals damage to enemies standing nearby. But honestly, I wouldn't bother expending permanent energy on that, when the primary fire will kill this guy dead in like 2 minutes. As you might imagine, he doesn't react well to this.
Sorry for the inhospitable accommodations, Commander. But we have to make sure we don't leave traces of Dolmen on your body. The board believes that
Boring. Fun fact, the V1.01 patch adds the Kickstarter backers into the end credits, which is why we know that this game would not have been possible without the generous support of Swagmaster 69696969. There is no New Game Plus, but you can continue on from your previous save game if you want to respawn the final boss. Not that there's much point, since his unique weapon is added to your inventory automatically when you beat the game. And there isn't currently much in the way of DLC, so all that's left is to get any achievements you might have missed. Let's see, craft all kinds of melee weapons. Well, I haven't got this one yet, so I suppose that I'll have to refight... Okay, no, this video is over.